For this week's show, we've put together the most comprehensive iPhone 6S rumour fact sheet of all time.
We'll be revealing some startling and pretty horrific facts behind the domain that has been increasingly popular in techstartups.io.
As well as how to kickstart your iPhoneography skills to become the supreme overlord of Instagram.
This is Luke Besant
and Cameron Norris.
Every week we bring you the latest industry news, must-have reviews, gadgets and internet culture.
Giving our opinions on the wider legal, social and moral implications of life in our digital age.
This is App to Date. Today is Monday the 16th of February 2015. We're episode 26 of the App to Date podcast and we'll get started with the industry news. How was your Valentine's Day? Was it good?
Almost fell down the stairs of an Indian restaurant and then got kicked out of another pub, so great Valentine's Day from here.
Well, I managed to find out some quite interesting facts about my crush, Candy Crush to be more specific. Candy Crush Saga. Candy Crush Saga has officially made $1.3 billion on in-app purchases.
1.3 billion has been spent on Candy Crush while people are still starving and I'm not a millionaire.
Used as a popular Facebook notification, Candy Crush Saga spent $1.3 billion on in-app purchases in 2014 alone. Just think about that for a moment. People considering acquiring extra lives, moves, hammers, bars and bombs on an arcade-style video game worth $1.3 billion. There are roughly 8 million daily users of this app and 8.3 have spent money on this game. That's about $163 each this year alone.
$163 per person per year to play Candy Crush. I mean, people, what's going on?
But yeah, like I say, that's just in 2014. In the second half of 2013 alone, they made $1 billion.
This is freemium gone wild.
Absolutely. This is something that actually fascinated me. It's actually only the third top grossing in the iTunes store right now. So it sickens me to think how much people are paying into Clash of Clans and Age of War. It just completely blows my mind. This freemium model is nothing more than a way of business people preying on vulnerable people to become addicted to their games. Sometimes you've got to think to yourself, is another level actually worth the amount that I could be spending on something else? For instance, a meal. You're buying digital merchandise that is literally nothing, and I can't believe $1.3 billion.
I mean, either, Luke. I mean, these microtransactions are dangerous because little and often all year round, and it adds up to, I mean, that's a huge sum. Who would buy a game, let alone
a tiny arcade game?
An arcade game for $163. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
I don't know how or where to stand on this because as a businessman, I see it as a great way of making a ridiculous amount of income, albeit on a moral and evil basis. And I don't know whether I should think it's not the consumer's fault for falling for it, falling for a sales tactic like this, but I don't know, it's something really rubs me the wrong way. It blows my mind that people would pay for literally nothing over. They pirate music, computer games, apps and films they play every day and you'd spend so much on Candy Crush. It's like 2p machines, isn't it?
It is an absolute joke. It's an absolute joke. I think there needs to be kind of some media awareness lessons. I mean, they do it for TV with kids so they understand that advertising, what you see on TV, isn't real. But there needs to be some kind of education against these microtransactions just to make people aware of what this actually adds up to in the grand scheme of things. Because people can't know. If they do know, there's something seriously wrong with the kind of people playing Candy Crush. No offence to any of the listeners out there who play Candy Crush and don't mind throwing money away on microtransactions. I've done it myself a couple of times, but nothing to that scale.
So we've gone in so quickly into a piece that's so long-winded and heavy opinion, so we should probably slow it down, do a shorter article, get ourselves into it. As of last Thursday, Twitter changed the way you can dismiss full-size images on its app. You can now pull up or down to dismiss an image, whereas before you just tapped. I know it's not a long story or a cool story, probably our worst. Next up, 16 gigabytes.
Now this next story is either good or bad news depending on how you look at it. But Apple are now allowing apps of up to 4 GB in size in the App Store. Now, as if you already didn't have enough problems with a 16 GB iPhone already, now you might even be limited to installing free apps, and that's a push.
And that's not just down to bad division. That's following an article we had a couple of weeks ago about the iPhone storage not being as large as it's made out to be. On an 18 GB iPhone, you actually only get 13 GB of free storage space. Yes, Apple is now allowing developers to submit apps and games up to the size of 4 GB in order to provide a more complete and rich user experience upon installation. For those of you who don't know, the previous limit was 2 GB, which games companies have claimed they have been able to create console-level gaming experiences thanks to Apple's advanced processors and hardware capabilities, so it'll be interesting to see what they can do with twice the amount of data. My advice here is that if you're looking to buy a new iPhone, stick to anything over 32 GB or wait for the new iPhone to come out. We'll touch on that later in the show.
Absolutely, Luke. I must say though, I think it's a bit of a stretch game development companies saying that they've made console level games on the iPhone or the iPad. There's very good games on there, but console level?
Depends which console.
Depends which console, that's right, exactly. Next, Xiaomi to open online US stores, but not to sell smartphones. Now, you may remember a few episodes back that we covered the Xiaomi smartphones and how they were changing the shape of the smartphone market in developing countries by making it easier for people on lower incomes to have high quality mobile devices. Well, Chinese smartphone maker Xiaomi has announced that it will open an online store for US-based customers.
We were super excited about this and we believed it would be an absolute game changer for the Western markets, but unfortunately the company is not selling its popular smartphones and will instead be offering its lesser known products such as its headphones. The reason behind this is cited as a logistical issue on the hardware certification, so for now it appears they're just using it as a stunt to raise customer awareness of the brand.
Which is a pretty good move because most people don't know what Xiaomi is and most people can't pronounce it.
And most people definitely can't spell it, including myself.
Listening, always listening. That's a very interesting headline you've written there, Luke. So would you like to get us started off with this?
Yeah, you've probably heard about the blind panic on the last few weeks from the tech community about Samsung's smart TVs listening to your conversations. This all came about because of Samsung issuing a statement saying, please be aware that if you have spoken words including personal or other sensitive information, that information will be among the data captured and transmitted to third parties through your use of voice recognition. Don't panic too much though, because you have to set it up to actually activate the recognition the same way you actually have to with Cortina and Siri.
But the reason behind it is that the audio has to be sent away to servers for processing, at which point it could be picked up and heard the same way people have been able to do so with phone calls. Some potential interception of data here.
Now, I've read some amazing comparisons between this and George Orwell's 1984, which really makes me angry because in 1984 it was a mandated thing that they could hear you whenever you spoke above a whisper, whereas this is a luxury goods product and you're voluntarily being listened to, I suppose. It did make me laugh though, as well as the phrase, stop talking loudly, the internet might hear you.
Now Samsung, they've been quite interesting this month because this isn't the only sketchy thing they've been up to, but they've actually been inserting adverts into people's home movies while they've been watching them.
Yeah, I thought that was more of a clickbait article, but...
No, you buy a DVD and they'll stick an ad in it.
What, midway through the video?
Midway through your video. Scary stuff. That's the Samsung smart tellies. Now moving on, the NYPD are flooding ways with fake police sightings. This follows up from our story last week.
As he says, following up from the story last week, from an official complaint against Google Waze by the NYPD, law enforcement in New York have begun flooding the app with fake police sightings, which I believe to actually be a violation of terms and conditions. So I think that's a civil law case, isn't it? But never mind that. They've done so in order to dilute real sightings in the city and make it unreliable.
It's a good idea though. I mean, it takes something of that simplicity to unhinge it. I don't necessarily agree with them, but you know. Anyway, moving on. We've got a listener's question. Katie Jones from Twitter asked us, can someone please explain the new iPhone rumours? What's true and what's not? So we know, new iPhone rumours are appearing all over the internet. Nobody is quite sure what's going on. And most of the articles are so packed full of irrelevant filler that you just don't bother reading them till the end. And then you end up missing the good information. So we've put together arguably the most concise and accurate explanation of these rumours anywhere on the web.
Yeah, I always think that every time these come together, people will just start going absolutely ridiculous with how they think their phone's going to be in like 2 months' time. That drop-down keyboard that was always rumoured to be on the iPhone 4.
God, yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of rubbish gets released. We've gone through that rubbish, and now we're going to bring you the good information. So when is it being released? I mean, that's the question on everyone's mind. Now, the most likely release date for the iPhone 6S, it could be the iPhone 6C, 6S, we'll call it 6S from here on in.
6 Plus S?
Potentially. The most likely release date for this new phone is September 2015, which would follow Apple's iPhone release schedule history. Now, I'm sure you all remember the iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus were released in September 2014, and the iPhone 5S and iPhone 5C in September 2013.
Even the iPhone 5 was released in September 2012, and the 4S in October 2011. So yeah, it's pretty much guaranteed to be a September release date.
Now, some people have speculated that the 6S is going to be released this spring and not in September, but we know for a fact that the A9 chip, that's the new processor for the iPhone 6S, has not even entered mass production yet, which kind of tells you that the spring launch isn't going to happen in September. September seems surer than ever. There's also rumours that Apple is hesitant about launching the Apple Watch this spring without the new iPhone to go along with it, because they're kind of suspecting that this might give people an excuse to wait until autumn to buy the pair together. You get a nice deal, your new Apple Watch, your new iPhone, and I mean, in our eyes, yeah, this definitely supports the autumn release date, September, October. So the next question, Luke, what's going on with the new screen? We've had stuff about Sapphire, we've had stuff about Gorilla Glass, all kinds of crazy patents coming out.
Well, there's some debate about whether the iPhone 6S will be more durable by incorporating new materials into the screen, which did include sapphire glass that everyone's heard so much about, but Apple's Sapphire production partner has gone bankrupt.
Wah, wah, wah.
However, the company behind Gorilla Glass that's used in Apple's current iPhones has revealed that the new types of glass, codenamed Project Fire.
That's Phire. Now, this could be used instead of Sapphire because it's apparently just as durable, and yes, the name does sound like a complete rip-off. This is literally Sapphire without the first SAP. I mean, come on, Gorilla Glass company. I'm not going to name you, but come on. The Sapphire screens were great for scratch performance, but they shattered when dropped. So apparently the company has developed a material that offers the same scratch damage resistance and drop performance of Gorilla Glass 4, which is the latest Gorilla Glass, with a scratch resistance that approaches the same level as Sapphire. But note, they said approaches, so it's not going to be as good as Sapphire, but it's almost going to be as good as Sapphire. And that's a step up from Gorilla Glass 4, because, I mean, I don't think I've seen a single iPhone, apart from yours, Luke, that hasn't got a shattered screen.
I am very precious over my iPhone.
He's very precious. Despite it, I remember once it jumped out of your pocket. It kind of leapt. It was like some invisible frog.
It's a new app.
A new app. Now, also in January, rumours began surfacing about a 3D pressure sensor for the iPhone 6S's display, which could mean that Apple is planning to bring the same technology that it uses in its Apple Watch to enable the iPhone 6S to differentiate between a tap and a press, which will undoubtedly result in a torrent of new apps and app updates, which is sure to keep us busy. What's going on with the new camera? Loads more rumours about this.
Rumours that emerged in November 2014 suggest that we should expect the iPhone 6S's camera to represent the biggest camera jump in history made on the iPhone. With dual lens that offers optical zoom capabilities, this means you can zoom and take photos using an optical lens made from glass without pixelating the image. However, sources seem to suggest that it will probably keep an 8 megapixel camera, so don't throw away your digital SLR just yet.
Now, I wouldn't be too worried about the 8 megapixel. It's not great, it's not terrible. An actual optical zoom, a mechanical optical zoom, would absolutely change the iPhone, because the digital zoom is okay, but I mean, you can tell. You can tell.
Here's the issue though. On the iPhone 6, they have optical image stabilization, and because of this, they now have a camera that's not flush with the back of the iPhone, so it doesn't sit perfectly on a table the way you'd probably want it to, unless you've got a case on it. If they were to add an optical zoom onto it, I can only assume they're going to have a physically moving component on the outside of the phone, which could mean that it will be definitely not waterproof to start with, definitely not sandproof. I don't know if you've ever taken a camera to the beach. It just holds a whole host of problems to have a bigger camera. It has to be physically bigger to be an optical zoom, surely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big photography guy myself. It's gonna have to be bigger, but I think the phones need to be bigger. I mean, what's all this like bending in half nonsense? I mean, I know we kind of debunked that, the whole bend gate issue, but I think they are getting a little bit stupidly thin. So I'll tell you what it's like, Luke. It's like pizza dough. They're rolling this pizza dough out because they think everyone wants the thin crust base. But people have had enough of thin crust base. People want some deep pan. So give us a deep pan iPhone. Put all the features inside the phone. Let's not have bits popping out. Let's have it nice and flush. A deep pan iPhone. Forget this thin base stuff.
No shattering screens.
Yeah.
No bits popping out of it.
Yeah.
I can't floor it. I want a waterproof iPhone.
Yeah. A waterproof iPhone. I mean, basically, just get a GoPro, get an iPhone, fuse them together. That would be brilliant.
Yeah.
And add optical zoom. Which brings us to the next section. How much faster will this be? Now, a lot of sources are suggesting that the iPhone 6s will have 2 GB of RAM rather than the 1 GB found in the iPhone 6 and iPhone 6 Plus currently, which could indicate that iOS 9 will have better multitasking features than would otherwise be possible thanks to the extra memory. Now, we've mentioned this before because we've compared the RAM in iPhones with the RAM in the new Xiaomi smartphones. I mean, the Xiaomi dominated it, which we'll talk a little bit more about later because iPhone seems to be in trouble in China. Anyway, this is something I know you've been hoping for a while now, Luke. But it might mean an unwanted price bump for the iPhone 6s, which isn't so great.
However, the good news is that the company behind the technology that gives Apple its processors has said that the next generation of Cortex-A7 II processors will have 3.5 times the performance of the iPhone 6 chip, which is significantly more efficient.
3.5 times better performance is amazing. Well, I'm telling you what, they can make this 10 times if they just do a deep pan iPhone.
Well, I've been thinking recently, do you remember they had that thing a long time ago and Google had a similar thing, I think it was called Project Aura, that they were going to have this modular phone set up. I was thinking if Apple were to come out with something like that, I think that would be truly revolutionary, but I don't see them doing it because of their design. They like to have everything so perfect.
Yeah, and the Orwells meant to last for 10 years. So that you could keep changing the parts and you wouldn't need to update the base module for 10 years. And, well, that just doesn't sit well with Apple's current business plan, does it, of 12 monthly updates.
Yeah.
New phones, new shapes, new surprises. You may have heard the possibility of an iPhone 6 mini. So the iPhone 6 just might be joined by an iPhone 6s mini, a new 4-inch smartphone from Apple that will launch alongside the iPhone 6s and the 5.5-inch iPhone 7, potentially, if this comes out, again another rumour, around September, autumn time this year as a replacement for the iPhone 5C.
Because I really wanted an iPhone 6s Plus mini. No, it seems a bit ridiculous that, because you're stepping down to the watch market again, really, aren't you? 4 inches. I don't know, is this an iPhone 4? What's going on here? I don't really understand that at all, because then what you have is an entire range of screens from Apple, right up from the watch to the iMac.
Absolutely.
Or an Apple TV even.
Now, the potential kind of thought behind this is that having a lower cost phone to offer people who don't already own an iPhone is a pretty great way to get them into the Apple ecosystem. So then they get the watch, they get the upgrades, they get the iPads. And I mean, it's also going to be necessary for breaking into these huge markets like China, India and Africa, especially now that Apple are receiving such huge pressure for market share from Xiaomi, who are offering better spec devices than the iPhone at cheaper prices. And to back this up, Apple was actually estimated of having sold 24 million iPhone 5C models by June 2014. And I mean, that's pretty crazy because that was their, at least supposed to be their budget phone. So they might be releasing this 6S mini as a new budget upgrade. And by October 2014, the 5C models had actually topped the UK smartphone sales charts, despite so many people dismissing the 5C as a flop. And this actually made the 5C the best-selling smartphone in Britain in August 2014, outselling the flagship iPhone 5S and the Samsung Galaxy S5. There might be some weight behind this story. It sounds ridiculous, but Apple kind of need to do things a little differently. Xiaomi is annihilating them in China at the moment. It's almost embarrassing because they were doing so well. That's poised to happen in the US. Xiaomi are there almost, I mean, they've set up this US store and they're there kind of mockingly, like the Trojan horse, the floodgates are going to open.
Yeah.
Beware, Apple, beware.
However, earlier this month, a Chinese website called Ferg.com cited sources within Apple's supply chain that say they're not going to create a 4-inch iPhone after all. We're expecting Apple to stick with a 4.7-inch display for the iPhone 6's successor, as its display size seems to have gone down with fans.
And that's it for our new iPhone 6S rumours. Anything else is probably a load of garbage, but we will keep an eye on that and we'll keep you updated. So we're going to move on now that you're all excited about optical zoom and new processors. We're going to teach you how to pimp your iPhoneography skills with Photojojo. Now, I recently found this tri-eye lens dial iPhone case, if that wasn't a mouthful, that lets you choose between fisheye lens, telephoto lens and wide angle lens. It's really, really cool. It looks like an old Super 8 camera and it's made from solid aluminium, and it even comes with a standard tripod screw to mount your iPhone in landscape and portrait mode, however you want it. But sadly, it's no longer being produced, and the website of the company who actually make it is infected with malware, so you can't even get on there. So I won't be giving anyone that address. And yes, this product is old because it was designed for the iPhone 4 and it's no longer available. So we found a really cool alternative because we just thought, you know, this lens capability really needs to be used in the iPhone. You can get some stunning photos for Instagram, Facebook, whatever, if you use these lens attachments. So we've checked out Photojojo.
The Photojojo Pro Quality Fisheye, Super Fisheye, Telephoto, Wide Angle, Macro and Polarizing lens for your mobile devices is pretty amazing. Yes, we said mobile device because it's pretty much compatible with everything. Each lens is crafted with solid aluminium and outfitted thick, high-clarity glass.
They've been factory tested and hand inspected to ensure what the company describes as optical perfection. Now, we've checked out some reviews and photos taken using the Photojojo lenses, and they're definitely worthy of that description. Now, the way it works is that each set comes with an adhesive removable metal ring that fits any phone, and then the phone lens then attaches to this ring magnetically, meaning you can quickly change the lenses really easily. I think it's awesome. I think that the huge range of lenses that you have available at really, really accessible prices. I mean, they're $20 per lens. You can buy the whole kit for $99. I'm going to get it. I'm going to get it for the iPad. I mean, come on, I won the Explore Kent Spring 2014 photo competition.
Oh, wow.
Explore Kent 2015, here I come. Get off my telephoto lenses and lamb's face, yeah. Anyway, they got some pretty nice cases, Luke, which we had a look at. And Photojojo themselves have a really cool guide on how to take emergency selfies on their blog.
Now on to the opinions section. This next topic is an example of international law being a crime against humanity. Now, while .tv brings millions of dollars a year to the tiny South Pacific island nation of Tavula and .me benefits Montenegro, the people of the British Indian Ocean Territory or the Saga Islands don't see a penny.
In fact, profits from the sale of each .io domain flow to the very organisation that violently expelled the indigenous people from their land just a generation or two ago. And that organisation is the British government. Yep, I'm looking at you, British government. Now, undoubtedly, you will have already come across the .io top-level domain that's pretty popular among tech startups that want to take advantage of the input-output reference and the relative availability of names in comparison to .com.
Now, this issue around .io was brought to our attention by David Mayer in his blog post, The Dark Side of .io, how the UK is making web domain profits from shady Cold War land deals.
And we're both very surprised and disgusted. Now, to give you a bit of background history, Chaganesians are largely descended from African slaves brought to the previously uninhabited island by the French in the 18th century. The British then took over in the early 19th century and slavery was abolished in 1835. However, the Chaganesians then became contract workers on the island's coconut plantations, and many Indian workers joined the local population.
In the 1960s, the US decided it wanted a military base in the Indian Ocean, and asks the British to provide an unpopulated land.
The UK dutifully detached the Chagos Islands from Mauritius, which was about to become independent, and created the British Indian Ocean Territories, and in 1966 granted the US a 50-year lease to the Diego Garcia Atoll, where a military base was then constructed. That facility would decades later become central to the War on Terror as a bomber base and a secret CIA prison.
The problem, of course, was that the island didn't lack a civilian population, as the US had required, so the British resolved it by getting rid of the Chaganesians.
These activities including rounding up all the pets and animals on the island and then gassing them with the fumes of military vehicles before physically forcing all of the inhabitants off the island. It's disgusting. It makes me ashamed sometimes to be British when I hear these kinds of things. And now these guys even tried taking their case to the European Court of Human Rights, but were thrown out. And WikiLeaks cables, of all things, showed that the UK established a marine nature reserve around the Chagos archipelago to make it harder for the indigenous people to then return home. So they get kicked out and then they get stitched up with all this international law garbage, false reservations. It's just, don't get me started, Luke, don't get me started.
What's even more disgusting is that the right to sell .io domains was given to the British government and the British company called Internet Computer Bureau, ICB, with the .io domains costing £60 each before taxes, or £120 if you're outside of the EU.
Now apparently the profits are then distributed to the authorities for them to operate services as they see fit. So in other words, a cut from the sale of every .io domain goes straight to the British government for the administration of a territory whose original inhabitants should be getting that money. These people are living in poverty. It's absolutely disgusting. Now, if you own a .io domain and you want to find out more, or if the topic just interests you, I highly recommend watching the 2004 documentary Stealing a Nation, which is an extraordinary film about the plight of these Chagos Islanders and their brutal expulsion. It details graphically what's going on there, the poverty and sheer destruction that's been rained down upon them. I mean, imagine all of your pets being rounded up and gassed in front of you and then being forced from your homes because what, the US want to build a military base? UK? Now, I can't say it on this podcast because we're a family-friendly show, but I strongly disagree with this arrangement.
I shall be writing a strongly worded letter to my local MP and council.
Now, we highly suggest everyone to get on Twitter to make some noise about this and raise some awareness about these .io domains, because the tech companies using them that become aware of this are actually donating a lot of money to the Chaganese people. So let's keep that up. Let's raise awareness, let's get them some money and get them somewhere to live. Moving on to a slightly different world tech issue, which is not really an issue at all, it's actually a really amazing piece of technology. Google Translate and Wikipedia have fused into a geolinguistic map.
Created by Easyway Language Center, World Map is an interactive platform that lets users learn about the history and pronunciation of spoken word. It's basically a combination of Google Translate, Google Maps and Wikipedia rolled into one. Great for people who travel internationally and the curious, but don't just take my word for it, check it out on http://wordmap.co.
I really like that, actually. It's an amazing web app. I was playing around with it today and I wrote in the words Chaganese Islanders and it said it in every single language on the planet, even Swahili. I mean, it was very cool. It was very cool. Anyway, I believe we're moving on to the apps of the week section.
Only one app of the week this week, and it is the award-winning game Limbo.
Now, Limbo is big enough to take up room for two apps this week because it is fantastic. I first played it on Xbox 360 and then shortly followed by Steam, and I'm absolutely thrilled that it's now available on pretty much all mobile devices as of this week. Now, in the game, you play as a little boy searching for his lost sister, and to find her, you must enter Limbo, a weird monochromatic world filled with nightmare creatures, including a particularly bloodthirsty giant spider.
The graphics remind me of Indian shadow puppets, and the bleak atmosphere and gruesome detail are something that you do not forget in a hurry. If you like puzzle games and macabre horror, check this out. That's all from the App to Date podcast this week. I've been Luke Besant.
And I've been Cameron Norris. You've been listening to the App to Date podcast.
Follow us on Twitter at iOS App News 24. Find us on Facebook, the App to Date podcast, where you can catch up with the latest show notes, artwork and discussions and more.
We also offer a free weekly email news summary, which you can sign up for through the Facebook page.
And if you're interested in sponsoring or a partnership with the show, make sure you visit our website, www.3deal.co.uk for more information.
Subscribe and we'll see you next week.